So before anyone sits comfortably, do you want to move up a little and gather in, since we have fewer people tonight? Even the warm up to it. Very difficult subject.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference.
It's not difficult.
Yeah, come close. Come as close as you dare. Okay, so tonight I want to dedicate the talk to Bernie Glassman, who passed away in the last 24 hours. Bernie Glassman, if you have ever encountered any aspect of the Zen Peacemaker fellowship, you would know of his work. So I just had a message from Warren to say that, because Warren has been very involved with peacemakers, that he died about 17 hours ago now. And it just happens to coincide with the fact that I wanted to take up tonight those two lines from the Heart Sutra: no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death. So to go into this matter, I want to take up the case from the Blue Cliff record, case 18. It's now known as Guaoshi's Seamless Tomb. Now known as that because the transliteration of the name into Pinyin Chinese changes it from what we've always known it as. Guaoshi's Seamless Tomb. The emperor of that time came to call on Guaoshi, who was the national teacher. Now that's a pretty, that's a kind of state-recognized office within Chan Buddhism. It's a mark of great esteem to be made the national teacher. And so the emperor comes to call on him and says, after 100 years, what do you want me to do? After 100 years carries the polite Chinese way of saying, after you die, what would you like me to do? What would you want me to do to mark your eminence, I guess? Guaoshi says, build a seamless tomb for this old monk. The emperor says, well, I ask the national teacher, kindly show me the design of the tomb. And here's the really interesting part. The national teacher sat quietly for a while. And then he said, do you understand? I do not understand, said the emperor. They're often in that sorry state, emperors. It seems as though with every elevation, IQ points are lost. I do not understand. And then Guaoshi says, well, I have a Dharma successor, Danyuan. Please send for him. Ask him about it. After the national teacher's death, the emperor sent for Danyuan and asked him, what was your teacher's idea? What is this seamless tomb? What's the blueprint for it? Danyuan said, he simply offered a poem. And here's the poem. the blueprint for the seamless tomb. South of Sho, north of Tan. Now this is like saying the whole wide world, throughout, as far as you can reach, in the known world. Within it there is gold that fills the land. Beneath the shadowless tree, a ferry boat. In the crystal palace, there is no one who knows. No one who knows. Now, one of the things that runs through the Blue Cliff record is the fact that Suedo pops up with comments and interleaves them here and there. It's like sort of in the old Celtic beer feast halls. There was a bit of a balcony around there, and there was a character in the Old Gaelic. I studied a bit of Old Gaelic, and there was a character called Bricui, and his job was, while everyone's down there eating and feasting and carrying on, his job is to hurl insults and hurl comments, hurl strange riddles and things down from the balcony. Keep the gathering peppered with insults and so on. Suedo's not so much an insulter. He more comes in with a kind of murmur from the corner. And so, south of Sho, north of Tan, Suedo says, the single palm of the hand does not make a sound in vain. Very mysterious comment, from which, in fact, Hakuin, some... it's hard to work out the maths. Well, in the 18th century, took up that line and turned it into the great koan, which is, what is the sound of the single hand? You may have heard about one hand clapping. You can forget the clapping. It is, what is the sound of the single hand? So Suedo says the single palm of the hand does not make a sound in vain. Within it, there is gold that fills the land. Suedo says, unnatural stuff, artificial work. He's offering there a beautiful way of understanding our practice. It's utterly natural. It might feel sometimes as though the ritual is something unnatural or perverse. After a while, that fades away. And you begin to see that the ritual, the form, simply supports unnatural matter without artificial work. Nothing needing to be added or adorned about this matter. Beneath the shadowless tree, a ferry boat. One of the more mysterious and beautiful images in the tradition. A shadowless tree. Where have you ever found a tree that cannot cast a shadow? Another way this is sometimes evoked is a valley that has no echo. He's pointing to that shift of perspective where we can sense the emptiness. As ourselves, as our bones, as our bone marrow. And then a ferry boat is there. A ferry boat carries souls across. You could say from suffering to no suffering, from delusion to clarity. But even more than that, a ferry boat, it's hard not to feel this is a kind of generous image. The whole Dharma, a ferry boat. And it is beneath a shadowless tree. Suedo says approvingly, the sea is calm, the river is clear. And the final line of the poem is, or the blueprint for the seamless tomb. In the Crystal Palace, there is no one who knows. Crystal Palace, well, the emperor comes from a very elaborate palace, but when he speaks here of the Crystal Palace, what does this evoke for you? This extraordinary structure, clear, you can see right through the crystal, and within it, no one who knows, no one who imposes knowing, and thereby occludes what is here. Teisho says, the Teisho is finished. In other words, there's nothing to add. I could leave it there if you like. I'll go on a little longer. So the seamless tomb, it's poignant. It's gathering in the fact that obviously this is an interview that takes place just before the national teacher's death. And when he says, ask done one about it, he means after I've gone. It's right on that brink. Oh, please sit comfortably now, the main case. Given the image of the seamless tomb, what do you find there? When you know that the national teacher sat like this, quietly for a while, and then said, do you understand? Interesting. Could this be a clue to the seamless tomb? And then why tomb? What is it that gives up its life in this practice? What is it that is seamless? How do we understand this seamlessness? If it's something is seamless, there are no joins, therefore there's no parts. It's even beyond whole, the word whole, it is undivided and indivisible. So I guess you could also say this very body, the Buddha, is certainly seamless. It is seamless with the entire universe. And perhaps it's also something of a tomb. Is it? Carries with it the promise of mortality. If we are here, then later we will not be here. A seamless tomb is a place where you can die to the small self and wake up free. And that's certainly also this very body, the Buddha, the awake. Excuse me. Now I'd like to bring this koan into companionship and echo perhaps with another koan that comes from the miscellaneous collection. It's very straight on. It actually poses you this problem. It says, you find yourself in a stone grave. There are no windows, and the door is locked from the outside. How will you get free? You find yourself in a stone grave, there are no windows, the door is locked from the outside. How will you get free? I remember one student got out his mobile phone and went, hello, Acme Grave Diggers. But no, not that way. What does this leave us with? This sense of finding ourselves, discovering ourselves, to be in a stone grave. Windowless, you can't see beyond the frame of life and death. Can you see into your own mortality? Sometimes I think we do have intimations that waking up itself is very much tinged with intimations. It's not for nothing that it's called the Great Death. And there's also, the stone grave. Well, certainly it's touching the question or the fact of a mortal body. How will you get free within this situation where we all find ourselves? We are all finding ourselves in this place. You could also take it in the direction of the mind states we trap ourselves in, the kind of you can get yourself into a kind of prison, a stone grave, in fact, of less than, well, greed, hatred and ignorance create a stone grave, but also despair, cynicism, weariness, melancholy and even depression can be something like a stone grave. How will you get free? Again, the question arises. So let's look a little into the one song that these two koans are singing, in counterpoint perhaps. So we've looked into the way that the seamless tomb is letting us into the possibility, really, that life and death, which the Teisho's words every evening remind us, is a grave matter. All things pass quickly away. And then what comes out of that is an injunction. Don't waste time. You're passing through. Wake up, wake up. And recently we discovered that there's something of a mishearing in the words of the Teishos. And if someone once misheard it as grave matter, when in fact someone was trying to say great matter. Life and death is a great matter. The great matter. I am very happy to have both. Alternate them. They do not part company 1 inch. The great matter that we look into here of form and emptiness is the great matter, the grave and great matter of life and death. They can't be separated. So, this very body in Zazen, is it something like, well, certainly at its deepest state, is it not a seamless matter? The sense of being, having parts, having eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, where's that when you're sitting deeply? That seamlessness and emptiness, then there's no difference between those two. They're not two. And a tomb. We will not get out of this life alive. So there's a wonderful Emily Dickinson poem that virtually everybody knows, I think. It begins, the first verse is, because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. So the poem goes on that, she was very busy, although in real life Emily Dickinson never left her room, but putting that aside, in the poem she's too busy to stop for death, so luckily death stops for her, picks her up, pops her in the carriage, and off they roll. And they roll past a schoolyard full of children playing and laughing, dancing about. And they roll on further and further until they stop before a house that seems very close to the ground. The roof is very low. Do you begin to get the picture? This is a grave, a tomb. So This body in Zazen, it is a kind of stopping for death. Stopping to hold without fear. The water is calm. The river is clear. With that kind of mind, to hold your own mortality close. To include it as a vital matter. Somehow, this seamless tomb is a kind of, the kind of flowing matter that brings together no old age and death, a shadowless tree. This sense of vast emptiness, nothing holy, no old age and death, and also, not but also, and also, no ending of old age and death. And so the carriage held but just ourselves, Emily and death, and immortality. Immortality is somehow in that carriage of mortality. How are you going to become the flowing bridge that can hold these two and span these two? One of the ways in which I examined the red thread of Zen in this book is by looking at mortality. How strange, the chapter begins this way, how strange that death and its inconsolable grief so defy mortal reason that we mainly pass them by. With a manoeuvre of mind executed so skillfully we hardly notice. In Australian vernacular, I have to say this because it was being published in America, we pull a swifty on ourselves almost every day. I recently saw a beautiful exposition of the undividedness of life and death in the film of a funeral taking place on a marae in New Zealand for a Maori serviceman killed in Afghanistan. His body had been repatriated. Every Maori I've ever met has said, I will be buried in Aotearoa, nowhere else. The coffin was carried to the entrance of the community marae, where it was greeted with a ferocious haka, danced by 20 powerful men. And once I saw just one very big Maori dancing a haka right down the main street of King's Cross, stopping the traffic until the police took him away. But it was wondrous. It stopped not just the traffic, it stopped your blood and was designed to. Not because it was fierce at your expense. It was fierce for your sake. It was beautiful in that way. The reverberation of a New Zealand haka reaches ruthlessly deep into the chest. Nothing is held back from its exhortation of an incontestable truth. Fierce bodily stance, gesture, grimace, powerfully controlled breath and shout attest to complete authority in the matter at hand. A haka brooks no resistance. At the start of this haka, the cries were, "Kamate, kamate!" It is death, it is death. And as the haka went on, those cries became, "Kia ora, kia ora." It is life, it is life. Life, it is death, death, it is life. Such to be the way the haka and the song and the chant wove itself. Just try resisting this truth that carries you right to the brink of life and death, the only place that any complete breath ever was drawn. Where life meets death is exactly where knowing meets unknowing. And of course, this is also the beach where the waves of grief deposit us, debris from a shipwreck. This is where we have to go to meet it. Then everything went quiet. The coffin was lifted, carried into the marae, formally received with sung waiatas and eloquently formal accolades, and then finally laid in silent state, people gathering round it in ordinary, crying, laughing, human ways, the living in company with the dead. The one who's now passed from reach into death's mystery is, for one last time, strangely present for just that time. Death has been propitiated back into the warm reach of life. The ancient amnesty has been restored, and it becomes possible for a short, shared time for the dead to be present through the presence of all who love them. A marae is already a kind of house for a community bigger than just family. A death, like a birth or marriage, restores kinship in ceremony. And then lots of storytelling broke out in this funeral around the coffin, and everybody was woven into one whole garment. And it was just beautiful to feel the force of life. It is death. Death, it is life. You could not unweave these. So partly the stone grave is an invitation to meditate upon impermanence. Now, impermanence is where you have lived every single moment of your life. Life and death are co-present in every breath. Breath in, birth. Breath out, your last breath, death. It's constant that we are participating in this grave or great or both mystery of life and death. So we have been here a long time. We've been here from the first flicker of consciousness, or the first flicker of breath. And even before that, there's a sense in which you can I haven't got the poem. There's a beautiful Ikkyu poem I wanted to give you. Oh, here it is. Good. Ikkyu gives us the sense of that mysterious time before we flashed into being, something ignited us, and the mysterious time after we flash out of being. He says, even before trees, rocks, I was nothing, no thing. Even when I'm dead, nowhere, I'll be no thing. Now, nothing, no thing. No thing is importantly different from nothing, right? No thing is seamless. There's no thing that you can pick out in seamlessness. Nothing, then nothing separate, nothing carved out of the universe. So this is folded back into seamlessness before we appear, after we disappear. And so we could begin to say life lies between these two eternities, and looking back at the one before we're here, it can be quite consoling. After all, it didn't seem to hurt, didn't seem to matter too much. And the one that comes after us, that can be electrifying. To understand truly that this life is short, that we are born in the morning and we die in the afternoon. If we take it deeply to heart, that electrifying quality is of immense value. And Ikkyu's no thing, even before trees, rocks, I was nothing. When I'm dead, nowhere, I'll be nothing. This no thing has a lot of room in it. Eternity. Could even say immortality. But let's look at this electrifying side of it. And Rumi, the poet Rumi, has a brilliant evocation of the great matter, grave or great matter. And it is excerpted here from the Matnawi under that title, Feeling the Shoulder of the Lion. A farmer tied his ox in the stable. A lion came in and ate the ox and lay down in its place. The farmer went out late at night without a lantern to check on the ox. He felt around in the corner and then he rubbed his hand along the flank of the lion. Up the back, feeling the shoulder, and around the chest to the other shoulder. The lion thinks, if a light were lit and this man could suddenly see, he would die of the discovery. He's stroking me so familiarly because he thinks I'm his ox. Now, I've always loved this. I love the sense, the familiarity with the lion that will devour us, that even that is tender and homely almost in this story. From Rumi's point of view, you know, the lion is probably God. The unnameable. But you can take this, it's a wonderful kind of story because you can look into it from all sorts of ways. From one point, if a light were lit and this man could suddenly see, I mean, that's waking up, right? Waking up. You suddenly die of the discovery that what you thought was some ordinary commonplace, get through it somehow kind of deal, was a bloody lion, was alive, was extraordinary, was magnificent, right? So the ox is, to some extent, life taken for granted, unexamined, cynically dismissed and got through somehow. A kind of plodding matter. And what's the lion then? Well, I want to suggest to you, it's probably something like Zhao Zhou's, it's alive. It's alive. And I can't help but think, in conjunction with this and Emily Dickinson's poem, of that moment I've talked about sometimes of being in a demonstration in Hyde Park in Sydney, a rally really, when East Timor, after the referendum to split from Indonesia, was suddenly in the teeth of a very savage, you remember the terrible bloodletting that went on, the retribution from the Indonesian army and the West Timorese. And what happened was that the name of the poet, which I didn't hear, I couldn't hear it because there was reverberation in the microphone at the time, the loudspeaker, but a name of a poet was mentioned, and it was said, this man is listed among the missing, presumed dead. And we want to read his poem, and don't worry, it won't take long because it's very short. Here's the poem. Be here. Be immortal. That's it. Be here. Be immortal. And I can't help but think that any practice that you take seriously is utterly about that matter. Be here. Be timeless. Be seamless. Be beyond the split old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death. No old age and death, no ending of old age and death. To become here immortal is to resolve these two as not two. When Arthur Koestler was facing imminent execution in a Spanish prison during the Civil War, he later spoke about what suddenly went through him in front of the firing squad. I must have stood there for some minutes, entranced with a wordless awareness that this is perfect, perfect. Then I was floating on my back in a river of peace under bridges of silence. It came from nowhere and flowed nowhere. Then there was no river and no I. He wasn't executed in the end. He didn't die at that moment. But it's as though he fell away from all fear, all resistance, all... well, he fell awake in the immediacy of that impending death. And the great master Lin Ji gave away what he called the secret of the matter, the great matter and grave matter, in these words: if you want to be free to be born or die, to go or stay as one would put on or take off a garment, then you must understand right now that the person here listening to the Dharma has no form, no characteristics, no root, no beginning, no place or places, no place he or she abides. I'm going to say she, yet she is vibrantly alive. All the 10,000 kinds of contrived happenings, that's the mind stuff that goes on, generating all the blah, 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 blah. All the 10,000 kinds of contrived happenings operate in a place that is in fact no place, no place. Therefore, the more you search, the further away you get, the harder you hunt, the wider astray you go. This is what I call the secret of the matter. So be here, be immortal. Be here in whatever is presenting as this life's one song, complete with it. Recently, some of you who take part in the online meditation group would have read or heard, a wonderful account from Warren, who is at present in Upaya, the monastery in Santa Fe. It's just a great account of the humbling that the grave matter and our factor of being in a stone grave that you might also call time, tick-tock time. I'm going to read you what his account is at this moment. I arrive early in the magnificent Cathedral Zendo of Upaya, with walls made from clay and a roof held high with huge tree trunks. This Zendo cave is the most physically silent I have ever sat in. I take my seat. I know it is my seat because it literally has my name on it. Later tonight, a weekend retreat will begin, and there are many visitors who seem unfamiliar with the dojo and with Zen. As I settle into my smug sense of knowing better, brackets, a distant poor cousin of not knowing, I hear a ticking sound. Tick, 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 tick. That is quite a loud watch, I think to myself. Tick, tick, tick. I notice the sound coming from the burly ex-bodybuilder who can't cross his legs or sit still next to me. With only seconds before Zazen begins, I decide to act now, lest the ticking might ruin the pristine everything. Excuse me, I say, summoning an urgent sense of tact and pretending to be naive. Can I hear a watch ticking? It's a heart valve, he says simply. everything pauses for a moment. I see the dim light of morning flicker in his eyes. It's early morning. Tick, tick, tick. The mechanical tick of his living heart booms throughout the room and right through me. Suddenly I'm aware of a heart beating in my chest too, something so ordinary I had forgotten it was there. In that moment I'm also aware of a vast room full of hearts, some contained carefully behind ruckusus and pursed lips. Some earnest, some just hanging out in the midst of this life, some who are sitting for the first time, tick, tick, tick. Some who are on boats in the ocean seeking refuge from war, some who are entering tall glass offices and sitting at computers with coffee to keep them awake, some who just got news of a loss, some who think they won't die. Each tick clearly pronounces, "Let me respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost. Each of us should strive to awaken. Awaken. Take heed. Do not squander your life." This, by the way, is obviously the way that the words of the Buddha are delivered in a paya that we have at night. I am silenced by the sound of this heart. I bow to him in apology and gratitude as the jiki rings in another ordinary round of zazen. Before the next round, I offer him an extra cushion to help with his sitting posture. Later, I walk into the garden. The same man is standing, eyes closed and facing the rising sun. There is a smile on his face. As I walk towards him, he opens his eyes and just says, "Thank you." I bow again. So, tick, tick, tick. Of course, when we sit zazen, there is no time. Our very being is the only time there is. Being time, as Dogen calls it. I think I'll end with this poem by Ellen Bass, which sort of sums a lot of things up, especially about all things pass quickly away and the way is wide open. It's called If You Knew. If you knew. What if you knew you'd be the last to touch someone? If you were taking tickets, for example, at the theatre, tearing them, giving back the ragged stubs, you might take care to touch that palm, brush your fingertips along the lifeline's crease. When a man pulls his wheeled suitcase too slowly through the airport, when the car in front of me doesn't signal, when the clerk at the pharmacy won't say thank you, I don't remember they're going to die. A friend told me she'd been with her aunt. They'd just had lunch, and the waiter, a young gay man with plum black eyes, joked as he served the coffee, kissed her aunt's powdered cheek when they left. Then they walked half a block, and her aunt dropped dead on the sidewalk. How close does the dragon's spume have to come? How wide does the crack in heaven have to split? What would people look like if we could see them as they are? Soaked in honey, stung and swollen, reckless, pinned against time. Honey and stung, they're both there. Sweetness and being stung, they're both there. Pinned against time, reckless. There's one last image I want to leave you with. It comes from a rabbi a Hasidic rabbi, and one of the old Hasidic stories again. And it goes like this. It's very simple. The rabbi said to his congregants, each of us walk a very sharp blade. On this side, a netherworld. On this side, a netherworld. In other words, the only alternatives to the very sharp blade is the netherworld of a certain kind of oblivion, a certain kind of lifeless, deathless oblivion. So we walk a very sharp blade. It mightn't be comfortable at every step, but we might as well get comfortable, as in grow at ease in walking this sharp blade. It is our mortality. It is our aliveness. A very sharp blade.